Hello. So, my audience is four families comprised of teenagers and their parents visiting our facility. And my audience is familiar with the area as this talk is part of a lecture series. Our mission is to present, promote, and protect our coastal environment and inspire stewardship of our natural environment. So this program is titled Brown Pelicans in the Indian River Lagoon. My name is Lauren Gomez, and I am with the Manatee Viewing Center in Apollo Beach, Florida. Well, hello everybody and welcome. So before I begin, I want to just let everyone know that the restrooms and the water fountains are down the hall and to the left. This is a short roughly 10-minute presentation, and I highly encourage our visitors to ask questions and participate. So this is just a brief introduction to one of the bird species you can find here called the brown pelican. And the theme of this talk is brown pelicans symbolize social responsibility, resilience, and our conservation success in the United States. So I want you to think about the last time you went to the beach. What did you see? Did you see any birds? Possibly a brown pelican? A couple of you, yes? Okay, great. So with a quick show of fingers, so 1 to 10, how many species of pelicans do you think there are? Right, I see one person with the correct answer, and that is 8 species. So we have 2 species of pelicans that are found here in Florida. They are the white pelican on the top left and the brown pelican on the bottom left. So pelicans are found in most tropical and subtropical areas. And here's where specifically you can find the brown pelican. Brown pelicans have different coloration depending on their stage of life. So juveniles have counter shading with a light underside, as you can see on the right photo. They have a dark body and a dark head. So the easiest way to tell an adult versus a juvenile brown pelican at a distance is by simply looking at their head. So the oldest known captive pelican lived to be 54 years old. However, in the wild, their lifespan is about half of that, 20 to 25 years on average. They are pretty large birds. They have a very unique hunting strategy where they dive headfirst into the water to catch their prey. And they're very coastal birds, so they tend to stay within about 12 miles of the shore. They have a large pouch that holds their prey and allows them to swallow. And it also allows them to cool themselves, especially here in Florida, it gets pretty warm. So one really unique adaptation about these guys. Another interesting adaptation about their pouch is that it can be used as a feeding trough for their young. So pretty cool that moms will bring their food right to the nest for their chicks. So we're going to get into this a little bit more in detail, but just to give you a quick idea of what their population trend was, in the early 1900s, late 1800s, they were almost extinct, and we'll get into why in a couple minutes, but it primarily had to do with plumage hunting, so hunting them for their feathers. Their population started to increase, then it decreased, and increase again. So we're going to talk about all of those points in just a moment. So pelicans have a really important ecological role. They eat roughly 4 pounds of fish and crustaceans a day, so you can learn a lot about where they've been, where they need to go. If there's a lack of fish, perhaps there might be fewer pelicans. So that's one really interesting point about them. Another one is that they are an end host or a terminal host for a number of parasites. So in the larger grand scheme of things, pelicans are really important for parasites as well. A third point in the ecosystem is that pelican eggs, as well as young, are very easy prey, so they can be a food source for other animals. And then, somewhat related, pelicans actually can have a negative impact on other nesting birds because a lot of other herons nest in the same area, and because pelicans can be somewhat clumsy, they actually can knock eggs as well as other heron chicks out of their nests. So that, in addition to competing for the same food resources, have somewhat of a negative impact on other nesting birds. So here's a list of species that a couple of studies looked at, how pelicans negatively impact all of these other heron and egret species. All right, so one of the other things that I wanted to talk about was not only their ecological role, they also have had both negative and some positive impacts from people. So real briefly, I just want to mention, as I mentioned before, the early 1900s, where plumage was really, really important to the culture at the time. And these plumage hunters nearly hunted the brown pelican to extinction. Modern importance that these species have: they're in the national bird of a number of places, and they're the state bird of Louisiana. So in addition to plumage hunting, other threats the pelicans face are increased turbidity of the water. So when the water gets cloudy, it affects the seagrass beds, which affect the animals, such as the fish and crustaceans that are going to live there, which then impacts the pelican. Habitat modification is a huge one in Florida. Unfortunately, pelicans have been kicked out a lot of their coastal habitat because humans also love to build there. They also had a food shortage in the late 1980s. In addition to the occasional frost that can negatively affect the pelicans and other birds, and finally, different kind of pesticides. So, what can you do to help protect the brown pelicans? Avoid using any pesticides that can run into nearby ecosystems and bioaccumulate. Recycle fishing line. Another great one is to take nothing but photos and leave nothing but footprints. If you see an injured pelican or any other wildlife, you can always call Florida Fish and Wildlife. And also reporting any illegal behaviors can help protect these species. So remember, conservation begins with you. So I want to have a quick show of hands if anybody can identify a threat to the brown pelican. Wonderful, everybody raised their hand. All right, here is a quick timeline of the brown pelican and different effects that nature as well as humans have had on them. So as I mentioned, in the early 1900s, the plume hunters almost hunted these birds to extinction. Then we have Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge that was established in 1903, followed by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918, and the introduction of pesticides such as DDT and a number of other things. I would say the most exciting recent thing for the brown pelican is that in 2009, they were removed from the endangered species list. So a lot of that is thanks to the protection and management of a lot of different things, but specifically Pelican Island. So Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge is located on the east coast of Florida, in between the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian River Lagoon. So there's a couple pictures of it. And as I mentioned before, it was founded in 1903 thanks to our President Theodore Roosevelt, who designated it as the first national wildlife refuge. And this is huge. This 5.5-acre island was one of the only spots that the brown pelican was found in the early 1900s. And thanks to the first warden, Paul Krogel, and President Roosevelt, they worked together to protect this beautiful location. Followed shortly thereafter was the Migratory Bird Treaty in 1918, which protected a lot of species against hunting, trapping, etc. So Pelican Island is home to over 140 species of birds, over 300 species of fish, as well as 14 federally listed threatened and endangered species. So what started out as a home just for the brown pelican has really turned into something more incredible. And it's also led to over 560 national wildlife refuges. Pelican Island has a trail called Centennial Trail, which is 560 of the national wildlife refuges here. That number is now 568. There's at least one in every state, in addition to 5 marine national monuments and 38 wetland management districts. So they play an incredibly important part in not only conservation, but also recreation. So a quick recap. With a show of hands, who can name the first national wildlife refuge? Great. Everybody raised their hands. In conclusion, brown pelicans symbolize social responsibility, resilience, and our conservation success in the United States. So pelicans have a really important ecological role. It's also really neat to think about the effects that humans have had on the brown pelican. Not only the bad, such as plumage hunting or pesticides, but also the good. Think about the first national wildlife refuge that came out of that. The next time you visit the beach, I ask you to think about the pelican's remarkable story about resilience and our responsibility to protect these incredible animals that we share this ecosystem with. So at this time, I'm going to ask for any questions. All right, thank you so much for attending. If you enjoyed this presentation, there will be more on the first Friday of each month. We have brochures near the door if you're interested in learning more about any of our summer programs.